I parked my car once, and I had a movie opening that weekend, and the guy, basically, the parking lot attendant went, "Sorry about your opening weekend." And I went, even he knew how my films were doing, so it was like being a hemophiliac in a razor factory. I can't stand it.
I mean, what do you find?
That's how a lot of people remember comedian Robin Williams. I mean, he's just so quick, brought all those many faces. I have a story I'll share later from when I had a chance to meet him, and he just did that. He was just... and just like went right into it.
Right, all right. But sadly, now we are mourning his loss. It's unbelievable, really. The actor apparently committing suicide inside of his California home yesterday. Now, the 63-year-old was reportedly battling severe depression, many taking to social media to offer their condolences and to raise awareness about depression.
Well, actor Harvey Feinstein said this: "Please, people, do not blank with depression. It is merciless. All it wants is to get you in a room alone and kill you. Take care of yourself." Powerful words from Harvey Feinstein, his longtime friend.
Amazing. It really brings home how serious this issue is. But here to help us better understand the dark side of depression is mental health expert and founder of the Global Institute for Forensic Research, Dr. Jay Singh. Dr. Singh, good morning.
Good morning.
You know, I've been, the last tweet that Robin Williams did was that of his daughter when Zelda was a little girl.
Sure.
And my thought as a parent is to take your own life, knowing you have such a person that is depending on you and loving you. It must be so powerful, depression, that I cannot even wrap my mind around it, not suffering from it myself. It is very powerful indeed.
A common reaction that we typically get when these tragic events end up happening, Allison, is that we see people say, how in the world could this happen?
Right.
We have a gentleman, Robin Williams, so well known, so beloved. We see this outpouring of love over the past 24 hours. How could someone who's so loved and who is wealthy, seems to have everything going for him, he has his family, how could this have actually happened?
Right.
Just like at the end of the day, we wouldn't fault someone who, let's say, has cancer for having cancer, or who has heart problems for having heart problems. It's important to keep in mind that what we're dealing with here is essentially a biological, a physical problem that manifests itself through different kinds of thinking styles. And so when it comes to something like depression, or in the case of Mr. Williams, what's called bipolar depression, where you not only have these high highs, but then also these low lows, this is really what we're seeing here, is this biological issue shown through these different thought patterns.
Before we talk about other people, let's just to keep the focus on Robin Williams right now. You never treated him, but from the research that you have done, do you feel like he was at the low point, coming out of the low point? What do you feel he was in this bipolar cycle that a lot of people with depression go through?
The cycle that we see, Steve, when it comes to individuals diagnosed with bipolar disorder is, imagine almost like a straight line of your average mood, let's say, going through these high highs and low lows. When you crash from one of these manic states, being typically very pleasurable, a lot of activity going on, etc., crashing down into depression, a lot of people think that this is when these tragic acts of self-harm or suicide take place. But in actuality, it's more at the point when you're coming out of that depression, when you have these thoughts of worthlessness and hopelessness, but all of a sudden you have that energy to be able to actually act on those thoughts. And it seems like, from what his agent has told us, or has told the media, that he has been very depressed recently. That seems to be at least consistent with this trend that we see.
So is there anything at this point, Dr. Singh, that for others and for family members, at this point, what should the support system be doing? Is there anything? Is it, even if it's just not to ever let that person be alone?
Sure. I would make 2 points here, Allison. I think the first one is that I think that many of us, particularly in this day and age where the stigma on mental health is a lot lower than it has been historically in the past, that a lot of us have a loved one who maybe is struggling right now with an issue such as depression.
Yes.
One of the things we want to be careful of is really not to jump to the conclusion that these individuals are really at incredibly high risk of self-harm or suicide. It is true that when we have individuals diagnosed with something like borderline personality, with bipolar disorder, that we see the odds of suicide increase about twofold. But what we're really seeing is not a jump from, let's say, 20 to 40%, but from a fraction of a percentage to twice that fraction.
What should we do, though? Because you know, we've talked about this before, is that it's a fine line. A lot of people, if you're feeling the signs of depression coming on yourself, you don't really want to talk about it. It's almost like a society.
Or
like,
you don't know what it is,
you know,
maybe.
Or you know, maybe you're just having a bad day, or if you're really depressed, you feel like, I don't want to burden you with my problems. But what should we look for to make sure that, you if it's our friends or loved ones, that maybe this is more than a bad day. Maybe there's something more involved here.
Everyone's going to have their down days, Steve. This is one of these things where that's a natural part of life, is these normal ups and downs. The key thing is to really evaluate for yourself, are these problems that I'm having right now, are they significantly impacting my ability to, number one, socialize with other people, number two, to be able to do my job as well as perhaps in the past, and number three, my ability to get educated if I'm at that part in my life. And so if you're really having these sorts of issues with depression or what we would call hyperagitation, so mania, then it's something where it's important to seek help if these are impairing one of those three areas.
Our time is short, but I wanted to ask, if you have somebody like Robin Williams, he has made his career out of making people laugh.
Sure.
And he's been put on this pedestal as somebody who is kind of the go-to. If we're having a bad day, we watch his movie. We'll watch his stand-up. We feel better about it.
Absolutely.
Is there more pressure on people like that sometimes?
Sure. I think that really when it comes to celebrity of any kind, particularly these funny men, someone like Robin Williams, he was the everyman. And I think on a day like today, every man is feeling the sense of that loss, the gravitas of that loss. It's something where it can be very hard when you're playing this character all the time for people to actually see you for exactly who you are. That sense that people are loving you, but not the true you, but instead this facade, however lovable it may be. I think that is probably very difficult to deal with.
Yeah, I would agree. Dr. Jay Singh, come back and see us. We have more to talk about as far as mental health.